In the 4th century, the divine and mystic Bishop Athanasius said that God became what we are so that we might become what God is. That is why we are here tonight. And what is it that God became so that we might become what God is? What is that in God? As I think of that, there are 3 images that come to me. The first, I think of something I heard from Desmond Tutu. I had the great privilege of living in community with him for 4 months over 40 years ago. He took a sabbatical and came to the seminary where I was studying. One of the things that Desmond Tutu taught us was a concept called Ubuntu. And as he tried to describe it, he said difficult to understand in English, but it essentially means that I cannot be me without being in a relationship with you, where you are fully yourself. And of course, 40 years ago, apartheid was still the law of the land in South Africa. He was afraid that he might not be able to re-enter his country after his time away on sabbatical. Nelson Mandela was still in prison. When he said that, the idea of Ubuntu, of being in relationship with one another, it wasn't just the people that agreed with him, the people that looked like him. It also meant those who were his oppressors, the people with whom he profoundly disagreed, that he, in order to be himself, needed to be in relationship with those with whom he disagreed. But I think of that sense of intimacy, that sense of connection that was so important to him, that we see ourselves in one another, and especially in those who are different from us. The second thought that comes to my mind as I think of what is it that we become as God transforms us is thinking of the wonderful music that we heard tonight. And I think of my own opportunities to sing. I remember the very first time I sang Handel's Messiah in a chorus. I was from a little town. I'd never heard it performed in a live setting before. But there I was now up on the stage wearing my tuxedo and singing, and we came to the Hallelujah chorus, and everyone in the audience stood up. And I was surprised, and in that moment of surprise, and as the music then took over, something happened inside of me where I became aware that I was part of a choir bigger than just the 50 people or so that were in the chorus with me, or the people that were in that room, that I was part of something eternal and heavenly. I've loved to sing and to listen to singing, and I think of something that I heard that a study in Sweden discovered, that as singers are singing, and they are singing in harmony and rhythm, that their hearts begin to beat in perfect synchrony. That they're breathing and they're listening, that they become one. I think of, singing when I'm in that sweet spot, and I'm working so hard to pronounce the words and match the pitch and get it just right, but yet what I'm aware of is not my own sound coming out of my mouth. It's as if what I'm hearing is my voice coming through the voices of all those around me. But then there are those moments that one can be just utterly transported. One can lose oneself. There's no ego, it seems, in some of those moments, to be utterly transported into the music and into the experience of being part of a group of people, all dedicated to this enterprise. The third image that comes to me is something that's come to me pretty recently. I only moved to the Pacific Northwest 5 years ago, came here to retire, so I thought. But the forests around here are so different than forests in other places that I've been. The phenomenon of the nursery tree, I remember, in fact, it was at the Blodell Reserve, that I came to this tree that had roots that were over here and also over here and over here and grew, and then only this high off the ground seemed to join together. And then a fairly substantial tree was rising up into the sky. And as I said in my early sermon, I puzzled and I puzzled till my puzzler was sore. What was going on? And then it finally occurred to me as I was looking that, in fact, there had been a stump there. And a seed had fallen into the top of the stump. And then the roots had worked down, and then the stump eroded away, but the tree remains. As I think of retirement, as I think of now 40 plus years as being a priest, of being the age I am, I live in an extended household with my grandson. And I think that I see myself in that stump, that I'm now, there are things I can no longer do that I once could do. But that I see this new life emerging, and that I have some influence, some connection into his life, and that I feel part of something again. I think what it is that I think of is Christmas. God became what we are. God became human. God chose to come among us in the form of a baby, in that baby, to remind us that God comes into all of us, to transform us, and to give us the three things that come to mind, to give us intimacy, that sense that I am connected, that God knows me, I know God, and that as I know others, I know even more of God, and God becomes more present to me. And then God comes to transport me into the ecstasy of the glory of God, the eternal song that never ends, the sense of beauty and connection and pure joy that is part of God. And then purpose, destiny, that God does not forget us, that we are part of something through the ages, that our lives matter. Intimacy, ecstasy, and destiny, the gifts that God seems to be giving through Jesus. What are the gifts that God is giving to you that make you feel connected, where you lose yourself into that sense that God is bigger than you, that God is right here and right now? Let's take a moment of silence. I'm going to lead you in an exercise of being quiet and being still. And it'll be just a minute. Don't worry about the creed and the bulletin and what's going to come next. I'll ring a bell. It'll be fine. You won't get abandoned. But just in this moment, right here, right now, God is. Would you repeat these words? Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.